Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Salem Witch trials and what lessons as humanity, what lessons should we have learned from that, or not just the lessons for humanity, but the lessons in the practice of jurisprudence, the administration of law and justice. Have we learnt lessons? Did we learn them? And if those lessons have been learned, have they since been forgotten, or are they simply being ignored for some form of globalist expediency? Let's just go back to those times. Now, I've this is a pet thing of mine, the law, as you probably know. I've been to Salem and I've been to the museums and got some books and pounded the sidewalks. Having a look around and going to the places where so and so was hung or so and so was pressed. This is when they used to put a big wooden board on you and just keep on adding rocks to it until you were squished. The idea being that they would apply the pressure slowly until such a time as you fessed up to being one of the devil's confederates or something like that. Anyway, the museum, there was a talk at one of the museums, and it was done by this gender studies young woman, early 20s, gender studies sort of lesbian leftist, and she turned it into a diatribe about the oppression of women rather than dealing with the issue, and the witch trials were nothing to do with the oppression of women, and so to try and rewrite it as such rather misses the point, and thus I think bypasses the lessons. And we need to go back to the sort of 1690s. I think it was early 1690s in colonial, British colonial Massachusetts. And the witch trials lasted, the craze, I think, lasted about 18 months or so. And I think something around 20 odd people were put to death. I think hanging was the gig. Others were to die as a result of injuries from being tortured to extract confessions from them, such as the pressing that I mentioned a moment ago. But just having a look at this, where did it go off the rails? Because today it's, or since, and today it's touted as being an exemplar of justice gone wrong, which it is. But if we were to agree that that's the case, then why are we having in the United States today episodes of January 6th where people that were somewhere in the general vicinity are being thrown in prison for years, are being put in solitary confinement, that are being denied bail, denied legal representation, and the list goes on of the most terrible things happening in the United States today, persecution of Christian preachers and so on. These are all signs of a serious and terrible, in my view, breakdown of justice and jurisprudence, the administration and application of the law and due legal process and the like. And once these things break down, then you've got a real problem with social trust and societal functioning, and also this idea that the law is impartial and the courts are independent, and they're either independent as in they're not being politically influenced, or they're not consumed by a certain ideology which predisposes them to well, if you don't like black lesbians, then clearly you're Hitler and we're going to put you in prison. That type of thing, an ideological perspective on. So let me start now with the Salem witch trials. There's a few things that we need to sort of understand. The original pilgrims who came, Plymouth Rock and all that stuff, the original pilgrims who came were very pious and religious people, and they had, the Puritans, as they were known in England, they'd come to North America, Massachusetts, to set up, if you like, a very religious, very pious type colony where observances of God, living in that sort of pious state of existence, which had many good things about it, hard work and thrift and self-denial and the common good, that type of thing. And so they came to Massachusetts to have it. So that was the general sort of backdrop of the societal structure that they had there. Now, whether you agree with it or don't, I mean, that was sort of how it was at the time. There's no point judging them today by our standards as opposed to the standards that existed back then. Now, when you say, well, the standards are terrible, well, that doesn't matter. That's how it was. And it's in that environment, that situation, where these witch trials took place. Now, the law as it was practiced was still really going through a transition from what was known as canon law, religious law, canon law, to what was to be known as, and was already really being known as, common law. Now, canon law was religious law, and really the judges tended to be clerics, sort of, from the ecclesiastical class, and they would be the judges and the main administrators of what was seen as justice. And the idea of committing crimes was really crimes against God's law. So whether it be murder or robbery or failure to observe God, your day-to-day existence with adequate levels of piety. That those were considered really crimes of the time. Now, it hadn't made the conversion fully to common law, although it was there. The idea that you're meant to be treated equally under the law, that the jury of your peers, these things were there. Now, they'd been on and off in Britain at least since the Magna Carta, really, but it sort of had waxed and waned. And to have those sort of the Magna Carta type requirements, but not have habeas corpus, for example, the ability of the state to arbitrarily detain you without charge. Habeas corpus waxed and waned in terms of that being applied. The idea of you could torture someone to extract a confession, tell us you committed the crime or we'll kill you. That's hardly a decent gig. And we saw that in say the Spanish Inquisition, where people were willy-nilly tortured to extract confessions. Many of them died, and so after they were dead, he must have been innocent, and we had to kill him to prove it. But looking at the witch trials, there are a few things to, I guess, be consider in the wider scheme of things. Firstly, was where the devil was cited as being involved or being a primary player in the so-called crime, then that lowered the bar of evidence straight away. So, well, the devil's involved. The devil. We're allowed to do what we have to. The devil. Fuck. We can do. We have to use we can't let the devil hide behind the law. That fucking devil. The devil's going to use the law to protect himself. We can't allow that. We will not allow the law to be used by the devil. The law is for good, upstanding folk, not the fucking devil. So we're allowed to do whatever we have to do in pursuit of the devil. It's the devil. And have you got a problem with that? And you got a problem with that? Because that means you're the devil's confederate and we'll arrest you. So this is the sort of the wider argument that was going around. As soon as the devil was invoked, that was it. So, and we can see the modern day equivalents as soon as, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, that means you're Hitler, that means we can do whatever we want to, and so on. So it's happening today just as much as happening then. The format and instead of the devil, you're a racist or something, that type of thing. It's also, say in 2020, well, we're allowed to rig elections because it's not really rigging election because we're stopping Hitler. So that's allowed, and we're allowed to do that because we're doing good and those guys are bad. Now, I'm coming back to the devil. Once the devil was invoked, the burden of proof slipped. So instead of having to really produce decent evidence that somebody had done this or had done that, because you moved into sort of this metaphysical, ideological plane, you didn't actually have to prove it. You could assert it, and that would be enough. And once it was asserted, because again, the devil's involved, We all know the devil can hide and take any form and so on. So we had to be allowed to make these assertions and make these ideological assumptions, and then reverse the burden of proof, so that Mary Sue has to now, or Billy Bob, or whoever, has to prove that they're not in league with the devil. They're not the devil's confederate. They did not commit a heinous demonic act, and so on. So not only was the burden of proof slipped, but you didn't actually have to produce physical evidence, and you could produce secondary physical evidence. For example, we have a witness here, and Mary Sue says that Billie Jean that is a witch. Well, how do you know this, Mary Sue? Mary Sue's in the witness box. Billie Jean's an alleged witch. So, well, I saw Billie Jean walking past my field, my paddock last week, and she looked over at my cow, and then the next day my cow stopped giving milk, or was giving less milk. So that's because Billie Jean cursed it, and that's why the cow stopped giving milk. That proves that Billie Jean is a witch. So that's it. And what do you got to say about that, Billie Jean? So are you denying the cow stopped giving milk? So someone's gone over there to check. The sheriff has checked. The cow is not giving milk. There you go. You must therefore be a fucking witch. Well, hold on. How do you know I was walking past it? Well, Mary Sue said so. Okay, well, what evidence does Mary? Well, Mary Sue said you were, and the cow stopped giving milk. You live nearby, or that's the way you would walk to get back to your place. So therefore, you must have done a curse. And given that and therefore you're a witch, and therefore we're gonna fucking hang you because that's it, evidence. So this idea of assertion and the most ridiculous, really, circumstantial evidence, this would get passed because, after all, we're fighting the devil. The devil is everywhere. The devil is in our midst. The devil is hiding. The devil is there to tempt people, to demonically possess them. We know this. We know this, and we have to fight it. And we have to use every means at our disposal to fight it. And the devil will use people as his proxies and his henchmen to inflict this evil upon us. So we have to fight that too. And the devil's confederates could be everywhere, and we have to fight that. Nazis are everywhere. Homophobes are everywhere. And racists are everywhere. So it's the same we're seeing today. What lessons have we learned from 200 and 300, nearly 300 years, 300 plus years ago? Have we learned any lessons from that? So with this lowered burden of proof and this acceptance of if you like, secondary or subset level evidence that really wouldn't get up in any sort of factual type analysis, these were the things that were allowed to condemn not only the women that were hanged, but the men that were hanged as being confederates of the women, men that were killed in trying to extract confessions. And I haven't got the exact numbers in front of me, but slightly more men were killed than women. So this idea that it was an anti-women thing is bullshit in the witch trials, because if a woman was accused, then they would go after her husband or her brother or her son or her cousin, and they would try to kill them as well, or threaten to kill them, or again kill them in the process of extracting the confession. Now, were these people, I'm sure some people were drunk on power, but were these people trying to do bad? They were. Their purpose wasn't to do bad, or not in the initial sense anyway. They were fighting the devil. They were doing good work. Maybe the young kids coming out of law school today, we're fighting Nazis, we're fighting transphobes, we're fighting racists. We're doing good things because all those people are Nazis. They don't deserve legal rights. Why should they have legal rights? They're Nazis, and Nazis don't deserve legal rights. So that sort of thing. And here again, confederates of the devil and the confederates of the devil, they don't deserve legal rights. They're hiding behind the law. Their laws are for good people, not for these evil devils. And so we're not going to let them hide behind the law. yeah, we're just, and so on. So this was the mindset, the ideological mindset. We're fighting the devil. We're allowed to, exceptional things are needed. We have to go to exceptional levels to fight the devil. The devil has such great power. We must fight back because the devil's confederates are everywhere. Or today you say, well, Nazis are everywhere. White supremacists are everywhere. We have to go to. We just have to arbitrarily arrest them and send the motherfuckers to prison on bullshit charges. That doesn't matter because we're still doing good things because they're Nazis. And this was the view that, okay, so you kill a few people, maybe some innocent ones do get caught up in it, but that doesn't matter because in the process you're fighting the devil, you're stopping the devil. And if we don't fight hard against the devil will take over everything. And before you know it, we'll all be his henchmen and so on. So now, the law was already in the process of really making the switch from canon law, religious law, to common law. And I don't know if there was a day when it happened necessarily. But if you look at some of the changes that were happening in Britain following the so-called Glorious Revolution, where the supremacy of Parliament was established, there was more work being done on some of the laws, particularly separation of powers and the greater implementation of law and greater clarity in the framing of laws, and also the issue of habeas corpus coming up again. So this was already being sort of felt in the colonies, the British colonies in North America, and of course Boston being among them. So if you like, the equivalent of the Attorney General, I suppose you'd say, put a stop to, or to a large extent made it difficult for the witch trials craze to continue by pointing out the obvious, that if the devil is indeed the primary culprit here, or the primary causation factor, or the primary criminal, then the only way we can proceed with the case is to bring the devil into the witness box and cross-examine them to get the relevant evidence. The idea of lowering the burden of proof, arbitrarily accusing people, and then reversing the burden of proof on them, they have to now prove they didn't do it. That was in direct conflict with the newer era of laws coming out of Britain. And Britain at the time, regardless of whether your colonies are evil, when it came to the implementation of law and the fairness of law and these sort of things, then the British were probably primary, the apex of those developments of jurisprudence and the administration of law at the time. So if you went anywhere else, you'd get a worse deal. But in Britain, it was probably as good as it was going to get for that era and time in history. And so the Attorney General came along. Well, if you can't get the devil into the witness box to cross-examine them, then you can't just assert that these people are in league with the devil, and nor can you assert, as in the prosecutors, nor can you assert that just because someone walked down a lane or a road at the time and the cow stopped giving milk that they cursed the cow. That's bullshit. So really the Attorney General had the effect of shutting it down, and that he took as long as he did to act was maybe if one or two people were getting hanged, he would have let it go, thinking that the craze would pass. But as it carried on, and it even seemed to be building up steam, he probably decided, look, I got to act here. I've got to do something. Now, the guy was taking a fairly big risk in what was a very religious and pious type colony, an era and time and group of people, quite devout, serious churchgoers and all this sort of thing. So by doing this, he would have got some pushback. Okay, so Mr. Attorney General, you're in league with the fucking devil, are you? Hey, yeah, right. Yeah, we know all about you. So he was actually going out there and saying, no, the jurisprudence, the practice of law is the thing that we need to defend here, to protect here. This is what we need to protect. This is the pillar and foundation of our society, or one of the key pillars and foundations of our society. Reversing the burden of proof and going after people because they're supposedly in league with the devil when you can't even fucking prove it. That's bullshit. And so you got to think the guy was pretty courageous to do that in those times. And you can assume that today any judge that comes out and talks about the rule of law and due legal process, is going to be, oh yeah, you're a Nazi, and so well, you're a white supremacist Nazi, you're Hitler, and back then I can assume that guy would have got some nasty letters and so on, unpleasant things said about him, but really I see him as someone of considerable courage, really, given the time, and his act, I think, was an important one. Now, people like him aren't getting up and being counted today as they were then, but as far as I can tell, January 6th and the persecution of Christian preachers, and in Canada, where Christian churches can be burned down because people falsely make claims about mass graves of black people or Indians, wherever it was. These sort of things are just it's to me, this is the Salem Witch trials happening, the modern version of it, just happening again. And where are those who are prepared to stand up for the law and due legal process? Now, I go to lunches with people who, many of whom are well-to-do and on senior public servants on $600,000, $700,000 a year salaries, and they don't have to worry about money, or they live in the nicest postcodes in Australia, who think it's quite acceptable to rig elections if you don't like the potential outcome. It's quite acceptable, more than acceptable, to send January 6th people to prison who've actually committed no crime. And I'm staggered that these people these are the ones at the apex of our society who think the law can be arbitrarily applied. The rule of law can be selectively applied. Well, I like this guy, so not him, but that guy's a Nazi, and so on. And that they consider this to be acceptable and indeed ideologically beautiful, that this can be done. And it just goes to show how far our society has slipped and how we haven't learnt the lessons of the past. By the same token, these people say McCarthyism is terrible, but only because it targeted communists and left-wing people and that sort of stuff. But if the same thing or even worse is done to people on the other side, then no, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's okay. So even that's become tribal now, rather than a common law that applies equally to everybody. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.